All right, we're live. It looks like we're live. Are you still on the internet, Tina?
I am on my neighbor's internet because
Oh,
Spectrum
what a
sucks.
nice neighbor. Well, we made it, folks. We're very late because Tina had some
Sorry.
internet issues. Her dog chewed through the cable, and we're we're doing our best. But yeah, I am Ron Placone, and
I'm
this is
Tina-Desiree
Friday.
Berg. It's Friday.
I think we
Sorry.
have a delay. I think we have a delay.
Do we have a delay?
But we definitely do. Yeah. Um, but we'll power through it. It's Friday, December 1st. Smash the like button. Don't just push it, smash it. Show it who's boss. We got an exciting show today. Tina and I are going to be talking about the wonderful diplomat who was Henry Kissinger, great American. Sorry we lost him. Smash the like button. And later, John Farina, Johnny F, he's going to be covering a Palestine protest. He's going to be on the ones and twos
Right.
and the threes and fours because he's going to be covering that
Right.
protest. And that's in New York, right, Tina? He's in New York. He's
Yeah, that's
on
in
the
New
home
York.
turf.
So this is a ceasefire, I think, is my understanding.
So there you go. So it's an action-packed show today. Some studio stuff, some on the ground stuff. Tina's having crazy internet stuff. But we're here making it happen on this lovely Friday. Tina, it's nice to see you, albeit in a
Good to see
technologically
you too.
compromised state.
Yeah, I've got the house in the background right now. So, I mean, I don't know. There's a Spectrum outage is the only way I was going to get on the internet today. This is the third one this week. I don't want to complain about Spectrum, but man, it comes and goes in waves. Either it's working or when it's not working, it's just like one thing after the other. Anyway, having said that, since we have limited time, I want to jump right into this. So, Henry Kissinger is the guy that nobody thought was ever going to disappear from the face of the planet because he lived to be 100. And in his 50 plus years that he was in American foreign policy, he has advised 12 presidents, including Democrats, John F.
God damn it.
Kennedy.
Tina, I think we're losing you a little bit.
Uh,
You're a
was
little choppy here, Tina.
friends.
And we lost you. The ghost of Henry Kissinger has messed with Tina's internet. Henry Kissinger has, from beyond the grave, messed with the frickin' satellites. Guys, smash the like button, leave a super chat, and I'll get to them. I might not have Tina. I might be flying solo. So I want to talk to y'all. Please do leave a super chat. I wasn't planning on flying solo. I was planning on talking about Henry Kissinger with Tina. But I don't know. We lost Tina, and it took us a while to get Tina. Tina is a person of mystery when it comes to the internet. But all right, I think she's trying to figure it out here. And in the meantime, I guess I can go to one of the first pieces she had queued up here. Tina was going to lead this. Tina was going to be first chair to my second chair. But yeah, we'll go to some of the source material here. By the way, the Cliff Notes version, for anyone who needs said Cliff Notes, Henry Kissinger, not a great guy. Was not a great guy. And I know some people they feel a little they feel a little queasy to speak ill of the dead for whatever reason, maybe religious beliefs or just superstitions. I totally get that, like I get where people are coming from. Now I don't mind saying anything about Henry Kissinger because he was an absolutely horrific human being, and I think that sugarcoating who he was does a great disservice to the world. So I don't think there's any reason to sugarcoat who Henry Kissinger was. And if you're thinking, well, I don't like to say anything ill about the dead, guess what? There is another option you have, and that option is to say nothing at all. You have that choice to just say nothing at all, because the worst thing you can do is sanitize someone like Henry Kissinger. Call him a diplomat, or he was a little controversial, or this or that. He was a war criminal. He is responsible for countless amounts of death. He has caused nothing but pain and suffering all over the world for his entire freaking life. He is evil beyond comprehension. and he is no longer with us. And, I think at the end of the day, everybody who is born on this planet, the mission should be not like mission, maybe that's hard to put it, but you know what? When you're born, at the end of the day, you kind of look around and you kind of think, at least you should think, if you're an empathetic human being who's trying your best, you're thinking, I would like to leave this world a little bit better than how I found it. And for most people, that's the case on a micro level, right? Like you just leave the world a little bit better than how you found it because you were a good neighbor or a good parent or a good child or a good whatever the hell. You get it. You just try to leave the world a little bit better than how you found it. And Henry Kissinger is a prime example of the absolute opposite of that. The absolute opposite. He left the world infinitely worse than how he found it on a global scale, a global freaking scale. He is the prime example of how not to live a life. Despite how many dollars were in that guy's bank account, he is the prime example of this is how not to live a life. This is how not to be. So, that is not a life well lived. And anybody who says Henry Kissinger is a life well lived, they are committing a disservice to humanity. They are committing a disservice to journalism. They are committing a disservice to humanity, and they are lying to themselves and you, or at least to you. Maybe they're not lying to themselves. Maybe deep down they know, not a great guy. So let me scroll through some of Tita's stuff here. Let's go to what was the one that he did on Christmas Eve? Let's go to does Henry Kissinger have a conscience? The Argentina thing. Let's kind of go there. And then we'll go to Hillary and Henry. All right. So this is from the New Yorker. Does Henry Kissinger have a conscience? Probably not. This is from 2016 when Henry Kissinger was a ripe young age of 93. He'd be in his he was in his 90s. He still had a lot to give. He lived to be 100. He lived to be 100. And you know what? I felt a little bit of peace because my dear grandmother, who was an FDR Democrat, which of course back in her day that was just a Democrat. Today that would be considered a pretty big lefty, but she was an FDR Democrat as she was growing up. Read the newspaper up until her death, and she lived to be 101. So I take a little bit of a victory there that she beat out the evil Henry Kissinger. But you know what, Tina? Are you here or are you just frozen?
I think I'm here. Is it working?
Yo, you're here. You're here. And
Okay, I'm
it
now
is working sort
hardwired
of.
into the modem, and I'm sitting on the floor in my neighbor's house. Hi.
All right, all right. Just blink twice if you're being kidnapped, and this is all a facade. Oh, that was 3 times. All right, so you're safe. All right, good.
I'm
We know.
safe.
You know what, Tina? I'll let you lead because you should be leading this.
Okay.
This is you'd gathered the
I'm
source
sorry.
material. But I will say one thing. I will say one quick thing to you because I feel like you'll appreciate this. Man, times like these, I really hope. I mean, I'm either an atheist or an agnostic, but times like these, I really hope there is no God because I really hope that nobody out there, hear me out, you'll relate to this. Nobody out there was going, some supreme being in the sky going, hey, death, are they relieved that Henry Kissinger's gone? Yeah, he was
Right.
an evil guy that killed a lot of people, caused a lot of carnage. They're relieved that Henry Kissinger's gone. Well, fuck them. Take out Shane McGowan from the Pogues. Don't let
Yeah.
them have any joy at all. Shane McGowan, like
Uh,
literally the next morning, Shane McGowan. I'm like, oh, really? Damn it. All right. So anyway, getting
So,
to
I'll talk a little bit about the beginning part again. I'm not sure how much of that made it through with all this. So, I wanted to talk about the fact that Henry Kissinger had 50 plus years in foreign policy in the United States. He advised presidents from both parties, not just the Republicans, right? Both parties, including John F. Kennedy. Obviously, he was friends close with Hillary Clinton. Secretary of State under 2 GOP presidents, Gerald Ford, Nixon, very formative in a lot of the war policy that Nixon put forth. Part of where that stems from is, he studied international relations politics at Harvard, and his dissertation was sort of a primer on what we would call realism, which is a school of thought in international relations. And basically, what he kept putting forth is that American interests, and you can read into that American business interests, right? American interests supersede everything, including what some people might think of as being morality, right? So our morality as an American state is putting forth a national interest, and why that's important, in my
Doesn't
opinion,
sound
is that's the
psychotic at all.
it's totally psychotic, but the legacy is still with us, Ron. Think about how many folks in government, even now today, even within the Democratic Party, people that might even define themselves as being on the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, sort of have that same rhetoric that they say, right? The national interest, that's what supersedes everything. So, the tension there, obviously, philosophically speaking, is that you now have a guy who is loved by celebrities, by members of both political parties,
He
who is
was a
engaged in
sex
absolute
symbol at
war
one point.
crimes. Well, what?
He was a sex symbol at one point.
Oh, that scares the shit out of me,
Like
actually. Is that
during
true?
like yeah, that is true. During like the Nam years, he was kind of like this like sex symbol. Yeah. No,
Well, now through
it's messed
FOIA,
up.
it is messed up. Now through FOIA requests from the CIA, State Department releasing documents, we now know the extent of which he was really morally bankrupt, to say the least. Obviously, these are war crimes. So there are many more than what we have time to discuss today. I could actually make this into a 3-hour show. But let's just go through some of the big hits. I want to start with Pinochet. Pinochet is obviously a guy that is beloved currently by the alt-right. You will often see Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, whatnots, alt-right guys in general wearing these Pinochet shirts that show people being pushed out of a helicopter, and it's kill all the communists by pushing them out of the helicopter. Free rides for communists is one phrase that's attached to that. That stems from Pinochet. He was a hard right dictator. He was a horrible human being. But let's pull up this first article. This is the private meeting between Kissinger and Pinochet in Chile. We want to help. Ahead of Henry Kissinger's 100th birthday. So this came out just, a little while ago, actually. The National Security Archive has published a selection of declassified documents that illustrate the darker side of the former U.S. Secretary of State. Darker side is putting it mildly. That's a photo of him right there with Pinochet down in Chile. On Saturday, Henry Kissinger celebrates his 100th birthday. To mark the occasion, the National Security Archive, a non-governmental body in the United States, has published a selection of declassified documents that reveal the darker side of a figure who was the U.S.'s powerful national security advisor and Secretary of State, serving from 1969 to 1977 in the Republican administrations of Presidents Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford. One of the issues on which the archive places particular emphasis is Kissinger's role in bringing down the socialist Chilean government of Salvador Allende and in supporting the military dictatorship led by Augusto Pinochet, who ruled the South American country from 1973 to 1990. So this isn't the first example, Ron, obviously, we have of the CIA or other agencies overturning lefty, socialist, communist governments and replacing them with hard right dictators. We've seen this time and time again through that period of time. But what is really telling is some of the what was disclosed in some of these. So we are sympathetic with what you are trying to do here. Kissinger tells Pinochet, you did great service to the West in overthrowing Allende. He adds, my evaluation is that you are a victim of all left-wing groups around the world, and that your greatest sin was that you overthrew a government which was going communist. So obviously the overarching issue, this was, the height of the Cold War, was that communism, no matter what form that took, where it was the big evil, and it had to be defeated at all costs, even if that meant installing right-wing dictators that were absolutely literally throwing communists out of helicopters and killing them.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's this guy's life work. I mean, it's so it's so remarkable that this is the legacy he leaves behind. And he had, I mean, you'd think you have 100 years on this planet, and that's what you want to leave. Like
yeah,
that's the type of legacy. And I really feel, I mean, I was saying this while you were figuring out your issues. And anybody who is going to sanitize this guy is doing a disservice to the world and a disservice to journalism and a disservice just to history and honesty. And also,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, I get how some people they feel a little bit queasy about speaking ill of the dead or whatever, but well, think about all the dead this guy has caused. What
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
this guy is
disservice are you
responsible
doing
for
to all the
millions of
victims?
deaths. Yeah, indeed. I want to finish with just this little clip before we move on to the next thing. The meeting in Santiago coincided with the General Assembly of the Organization of American States, otherwise known as the OAS, which has been held in the Chilean capital. Kissinger tells Pinochet he has delayed a speech that he was due to give in order to warn him that in the address he will refer briefly to a report by the OAS's Human Rights Commission on the situation in Chile. Kissinger explains that what he must do, wait for it, what he must do to avoid the US Congress where there are problems over the issue of human rights, approving sanctions against Chile.
Uh,
I want you to understand my position, Kissinger says. We want to deal in moral persuasion, not by legal sanctions. So the Congress, Kissinger, everybody knew what was going on in Chile. So he's basically saying, yeah, there's human rights violations. Let me show you how to move forward and frame that so this doesn't become a bigger issue than it needs to. So that's sort of where this guy's coming from. It's very telling.
Imagine, well, just like imagine how much of a warmongering psychopath you have to be when you
Yeah.
are worried that you might be too far for the United States government, the most imperialist government in the world, like the modern day empire, and you're worried like, well, we don't want to go. they
Right.
they they might tell us to reel it in a little bit. Let me tell you how to get around
They
that.
might, yeah.
What a
And
psycho.
in fact, Colin, can you put up this unclassified document on screen so people can see this for a second? So basically, the secretary says that's Kissinger. Can you do those while the OAS is here? Pinochet says we have wanted to avoid doing anything while the OAS is here since it then looks as though we did it to dampen OAS pressure. We might be able to do it in 30 days. Kissinger says, if we can, we are prepared to say we have the impression that the constitutional act is helpful, as discussed, Pinochet has discussed in my inaugural speech. But notice the highlighted section is the point I pointed out earlier. We want to help, not undermine you. You did a great service to the West in overthrowing Allende. Otherwise, Chile would have followed Cuba. Then there would have been no human rights or human rights commission. So basically, trying to make the argument that because this was a socialist or lefty government, that their human rights violations were more egregious or greater than anything Pinochet was going to do, which is patently stupid. That's just
Mhm.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely remarkable, and yeah, this is our foreign policy handbook, and Kissinger is like one of the biggest architects. What I find incredibly disturbing, and let me know if you agree with this. I feel like the next Kissinger is already in our sphere. Like the next Kissinger is already alive and active in United States politics.
100%. Realism
And,
has
and
not left US foreign policy. Realism is still
not at
very much,
all.
yeah.
And I feel like another Kissinger could happen easily. And I would argue probably even easier now than it could then. Like I would go as far as to say I think overall we have gone backwards. And I think that the
I mean, you could
next
make the case
Kissinger
that Dick Cheney was as bad as Henry Kissinger on many levels, and,
totally.
I think. I
But
mean,
I but I think
some
I
of what the
think post Cheney.
conservatives yeah, some of what the neoconservatives adapted are definitely borrowed from Kissinger's realist, sort of academic beliefs, so to
Oh
speak.
yeah. I mean the axis of evil, the new American century, yeah, that's all, cut from the same cloth. And yeah, I think I mean people have already been saying they're like, well now Dick Cheney is the most evil person alive now that
Yeah.
Kissinger is dead. I mean, I think Kissinger definitely has more, more under his belt, but that's just because he's
Right.
older. I mean,
I agree.
Dick
I
Cheney's only
agree.
100. Kissinger was about 705, so he's got
Right.
yeah, it's so
So I
crazy.
want to move now, Ron, to Cambodia. This might be one of the most well-known things that he was responsible for. I don't know that people know the depth of it, though. And the most egregious part of this is that he actually got a Nobel Peace Prize,
So
which
nuts.
is so nuts. This is so nuts to me. So I think at the time people didn't realize what he had done in secret. So basically, in secret, they carpet bombed Cambodia. They carpet bombed Cambodia so many times in so many different ways that they left a vacuum open where there was no leadership of government left, and that allowed Pol Pot to step in, who is probably one of the worst dictators this world has ever seen. And that I can say without equivocation would not have happened if Kissinger and Nixon hadn't done what they had done in Cambodia. And there was really, in my opinion, no need for this.
Mhm.
So let's pull up the first post I want to talk about. This is the Washington Post article. This is a recent one, actually. So Henry Kissinger's central role in the U.S. carpet bombing of Cambodia. Nowhere in the debate over the legacy of former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger more searing than in the countries that bore the brunt of his military policies, such as Cambodia. Historians say his decisions led to decades of violence that have continued to haunt Cambodian society. For many in the country, Kissinger's impact was not abstract, but visceral and continues even after his death. Landmines planted during Cambodia's 3-decade-long civil war, which was driven in part by U.S. interference, are still exploding today. In neighboring Vietnam and Laos, officials are still undergoing the painstaking process of identifying and removing unexploded ordnance from a war that Kissinger helped to wage 5 decades ago. The sad reality is he leaves this legacy, which many Cambodians still pay the price for, said Sofal Ir, a Cambodian American political scientist. To this day, there are people who lose limb and life in the process of trying to make a living in a land that has been filled with bombs. So these are unexploded landmines that are still there, planted by us. From 1969 to 1973, as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State under President Richard M. Nixon, Kissinger directed the carpet bombing of large swaths of Cambodia that U.S. officials at the time claimed were sanctuaries for communist insurgents from South Vietnam, as well as North Vietnamese soldiers. Ben Kiernan, a historian at Yale University and a leading scholar of the U.S. legacy in Cambodia, has estimated that around 500,000 tons of U.S. bombs were dropped on Cambodia during this period, and they killed as many as 150,000 civilians. The scale of this bombing campaign, internally called Operation Menu, was kept secret from the American public for many decades. Though leaked and declassified records have revealed that Kissinger personally, quote unquote, approved each of the 3,875 Cambodia bombing raids. That's insane. 3,875 raids. In 1970, according to declassified transcripts of his telephone conversations, Kissinger spoke to Nixon about the situation in Cambodia before relaying the following order to his deputy, Alexander Haig. He wants a massive bombing campaign in Cambodia. It's an order. It's to be done. Anything that flies on anything that moves, you got that? So I actually, while we're there, I want to pull up I have a copy of this. Colin, can we pull up this one document? From anything that flies, anything that moves. Let's pull that on the screen so people can see this whole conversation. It's quite telling. Do you see that on the list there? Hang on, guys. Bear with us.
Colin, I think you have to add it if you're looking to add it. There it is.
There it is. Okay, so anything that flies, because this really kind of, I think this one little excerpt here really frames where he is coming from mentally, right? So according to a transcript, I want gunships in there. That means armed helicopters. I want it done. Get them off their ass. I want them to hit everything. Hang on, my internet's slow. It's thinking. What do you mean it's unable to connect? Did I lose you guys?
No, you're still here.
Okay.
Are you trying to get the document back up or what?
Yeah, it won't load. My internet's saying no. Que bueno.
Okay. Well, here we have the I pulled up Colin in the private chat. I put a Reddit link for Anthony Bourdain's legendary quote since we're on Cambodia. If you want to pull that up. Do you see that? Yeah, there you go. So this is Anthony Bourdain said this: once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. You will never again be able to open a newspaper and read about that treacherous provocating murderous scumbags sitting down for a nice chat with Charlie Rose or attending some black tie affair for a new glossy magazine without choking. Witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you will never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague. Or is it Hog or Hague? How do you usually next to
Haig.
Mislevic? While Henry continues to nibble nori rolls and ramaki at A-list parties. What is ramaki? I don't know what that is. I feel very
I don't
uncultured right
either.
now. Well, we got to look it up. Cambodia, the neutral nation he secretly and illegally bombed, invaded, undermined, and then threw to the dogs, is still trying to raise itself up on its one remaining leg. All right, now I got to find out what ramaki is.
All right.
I'm
Anyway,
glad I'm not
so
the only one who doesn't know.
no.
Rumaki. Rumaki is an hors d'oeuvre of tiki culture origin. Oh, so it's basically like duck on a stick, and like water chestnuts, liver, bacon, soy sauce, and brown sugar, and then it's just on a stick, and it's like an hors d'oeuvre that you eat.
Okay.
It actually doesn't sound all that appetizing,
Well, I
but
don't
I
eat
guess
duck,
it's
so you lost me there.
fancy pants. I don't seek out duck, but I've had it before in my life.
All
It's
right. So,
it's it's
anyway,
greasy, if memory serves me right.
yeah. So they literally absolutely carpet bombed, destroyed Cambodia. I think the outcome of that is that you had a genocidal regime that came to power under Pol Pot because there was a vacuum left there after all of these bombing raids and after we destroyed their government. And Pol Pot, I mean, one of the worst dictators we've seen in this world, bar none, in my opinion. So that is part of Kissinger's legacy, always will be. The next one I want to bring up is Argentina. So this article, let's pull this one up. Does Henry Kissinger have a conscience? This is a great title for this article, in my opinion. This one's from 2016. So again, all of this was started coming out when there were documents beginning to be released through FOIA requests and just being declassified in the wake of things. Enough time had passed. So this one, pull this one up. Okay, so last March, when President Obama traveled to Argentina to meet with the country's new president, Mauricio Macri, his public appearances were dogged by protesters who noisily demanded explanations and apologies for U.S. policies past and present. There are few countries in the West where anti Americanism is as voraciously expressed as in Argentina, where a highly politicized culture of grievance has evolved in which many of the country's problems are blamed on the United States. On the left, especially, there is a lingering resentment over the support extended by the U.S. government to Argentina's right wing military, which seized power in the March of 1976 and launched a dirty war against leftists, which took thousands of lives over the following 7 years.
Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah.
I wonder why they would have agreed. They're just like, oh, people blaming their problems on the United. Yeah, because that's who's at fault.
Right.
Because we go and we help these right wing militias install their puppets.
Right.
Like,
and
yeah,
then,
of course they're mad at the United States.
And I would say also, how many times have these right wing puppets ended up doing something that has caused harm to the United States? So it all sort of comes back around on top of it. Realism, in my opinion, is a very bad basis for foreign policy decisions. It's naive in a sense because oftentimes these guys, especially the neoconservatives, they feel like their ideals are the obviously clear, morally correct. Like, of course, this is what you want. Of course, you want my ideals. My ideals are the correct ones. How do you not see that? It's obvious, right? That's sort of how they see the world. So, in their minds, if they can install governments that sort of mirror what they've decided are American values, then of course that just improves the country by default. It's just a very naive way to view the world. It's also very morally repugnant, in my opinion.
Well, I think yeah. I mean, it's incredibly nationalistic. It's incredibly, like just straight up xenophobic and just like, oh yeah, no, we're the best. And
Right.
it's so interesting because you're like, what are you basing this off of? Like what do you? I mean, it's like you look around and it's like, how can the United States have that level of a lack of self-awareness at this point?
Right.
We are. I mean, by some metrics, we're not even a first world country anymore. despite being one of the wealthiest countries in the world, our quality of life is declining and declining and declining. And I
Yeah, for the
mean,
vast
hey,
majority, it certainly is. For some people, it's improving. I think, the income inequality is untenable.
for literally the 1% of the 1%, for everyone else, it's going the opposite way. We have, I mean, how anyone can look and be like, "Oh yeah, the United States, that's is an example of how to be." I mean, the rest of the industrialized world freaking laughs at that. They freaking
Right.
laugh at that, and they look at us and they're just like, "What the hell are you guys doing?" So, I mean,
It's
to have that lack of awareness, it's because you're part of the 1% of the 1%
right.
that is winning. You're looking around and you're seeing a really nice gated community and you don't know anybody
And the
who's living
political
paycheck to
unrest that's
paycheck.
being created from that doesn't seem to affect them yet. I think it's going to be a minute before it does.
It's not in their backyard. I
So
mean,
it's not in
I
their
mean,
backyard, right?
shit's
So
gonna
what
hit the
happened on
fan here.
January 6th, that's not in their backyard. That's fine. Like, I think it's going to get worse because of that sort of bubble that they live
Oh,
in.
domestically, yeah, no, shit'll hit the fan here
Yeah.
before they see anything
Before they feel the
because of their
pain, the pressure.
yeah, and
Yeah.
from their shenanigans abroad. I mean,
Right.
I think, well, my honest guess is that we're among the beginning of the worst. That's a longer conversation for another day, but I feel like we are at the start of it's gonna get a
It's
lot
definitely not played
worse.
out yet. I agree with you there. All right.
Yeah.
So back to our article. So Obama's visit coincided with the 40th anniversary of the coup. He pointedly paid homage to the Dirty Wars victims by visiting a shrine built in their honor on the outskirts of Buenos Aires. In an address he gave at the shrine, Obama acknowledged what he characterized as American sins of omission, but he stopped short of issuing an outright apology.
Of course he
Democracies
did.
have,
But
yeah, right,
he did drink some water from Flint to make them all feel
right.
better.
Yeah,
He had a
right.
little beaker of Flint water and he drank it and then he said to somebody he's like, "You know, we should all just have a beer together." But they couldn't because they're dead because they were bombed by us.
Right. Democracies have to have the courage to acknowledge when we don't live up to the ideals that we stand for, he said, and we have been slow to speak out for human rights. And that was the case here. That's kind of a weak. In the run up to Obama's trip, Susan Rice, the president's national security advisor, had announced the administration's intention to declassify thousands of U.S. military and intelligence documents pertaining to that tumultuous period in Argentina. It was a goodwill gesture aimed at signaling Obama's ongoing effort to change the dynamic of U.S. relations with Latin America, to bury the last remnant of the Cold War, as he said in Havana during the same trip. Last week, the first tranche of those declassified documents were released. The documents revealed that the White House and the U.S. State Department officials were intimately aware of the Argentine military's bloody nature and that some of them were horrified by what they knew. Others, most notably Henry Kissinger, was not. In a 1978 cable, the U.S. ambassador Raul Castro wrote about a visit by Kissinger to Buenos Aires, where he was a guest of the dictator Jorge Rafael Videla while the country hosted the World Cup. My only concern is that Kissinger's repeated high praise for Argentina's action in wiping out terrorism may have gone to some considerable extent to his host's head. So notice here of the use terrorism, right? Everything that the left was doing, they are naming as terrorism. So ergo, they're just killing terrorists. That when you look at the documents, you'll see that is often the case. He also used some of that language at the East Timor documents as well, which we'll get to in a minute. The ambassador went on to write fretfully, there is some danger that Argentines may use Kissinger's laudatory statements as justification for hardening their human rights stance. The latest revelations compound a portrait of Kissinger as a ruthless cheerleader, if not the active co conspirator of Latin American military regimes engaged in war crimes. In evidence that emerged from previous declassifications of documents during the Clinton administration, Kissinger was shown not only to have been aware of what the military was doing, but to have actively encouraged it. 2 days after the Argentine coup, Kissinger was briefed by his Assistant Secretary of State for Inter American Affairs, William Rogers, who warned him, I think we've got to expect a fair amount of repression. That's an understatement. Probably a good deal of blood in Argentina before too long. I think they're going to have to come down very hard, not only on the terrorists, again, the terrorists, but on the dissidents of the trade unions and their parties. Kissinger replied, "Whatever chance they have, they will need a little encouragement I do want to encourage them because I do want to encourage them. I don't want to give the sense that they are harassed by the United States." Under Kissinger's direction, they certainly were not harassed. Right after the coup, Kissinger sent his encouragement to the generals and reinforced that message by expediting a package of U.S. Secretary assistance. In a meeting with the Argentine foreign minister 2 months later, Kissinger advised him winkingly, according to a memo written about the conversation, "We are aware in a difficult period we are aware you are in a difficult period. It is a curious time when political, criminal, and terrorist activities tend to merge without any clear separation. We understand you must establish authority. If there are things that have to be done, you should do them quickly."
Hmm. Oh boy. Yep. What a
So,
guy. What
what
a
a
guy.
guy.
Who do you
All
think's
right, but
gonna be the next Kissinger?
I don't
Do you have
know.
a
I want to
and
move on to
okay, go
East.
ahead and move on.
I just because because of my internet, we're so low on time because we were going to be going over to see John Farina soon, I think. So East Timor is another example in which a genocide occurs at the hands of Suharto in Indonesia. There were illegal arms sales that happened directed by Kissinger. He hid it from Congress, lied to Congress to make sure that that happened. What occurred there was post colonialism, right? So Portugal was leaving the country. That had been a colony of Portugal, and basically Suharto decided that he was just going to go over there and take Timor for himself. So there was a whole tranche of documents that were released about this. So I want to go through just a couple of them really quickly. So this is from the archive page. The Indonesian invasion of East Timor in December 1975 set the stage for the long, bloody, and disastrous occupation of the territory that ended only after an international peacekeeping force was introduced in 1999. President Bill Clinton cut off military aid to Indonesia in September of 1999, reversing a long-standing policy of military cooperation, but questions persist about U.S. responsibility for the 1975 invasion, in particular, the degree to which Washington actually condoned or supported the bloody military offensive. Most recently, journalist Christopher Hitchens raised questions about the role of the former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger in giving a green light to the invasion that has left perhaps 200,000 dead in the years since. Two newly declassified documents from the Gerald Ford Presidential Library released to the National Security Archive shed light on the Ford administration's relationship with President Suharto of Indonesia during 1975. Of special importance is the record of Ford's and Kissinger's meeting with Suharto in December of 1975. The document shows that Suharto began the invasion knowing that he had the full approval of the White House. Both of these documents had been released and heavily redacted some years ago, but with Suharto now out of power, following the collapse of Indonesian control over East Timor, the situation has changed enough where they've now released them unredacted in their entirety. So one of the conversations that happened, this is document, I want to put a document number 6. Colin, if you can put that one up. This is a conversation. All right, so let me scroll down through this. That's it. Thank you so much. I have a delay here on my internet still, I guess. All right, so scroll down. This is the conversation of the meeting. I want to go down to page towards the end here. All right, so this is page it's marked 21 at the top. Secretary Kissinger. How about low profile participation? Mr. Miller says, well, we would intend at the most to send only the political counselor. We would not send an ambassador. On the other hand, it now looks like there will be very few countries that do participate. So I think that regardless of what level of officer we send, it will be fairly high. So meaning that they're the only ones that are going to probably be doing this. Secretary Kissinger, am I wrong in assuming if we don't send somebody, there will be some story out of it showing its disapproval of the United States action in regard to Timor? And Mr. Habib says some of the countries won't be going. Kissinger says, like who? Habib says Singapore 1 to 10, probably Thailand. Scroll to the next one. Why is it in our interest to? I'm trying to understand the rationale. Mr. Miller says, well, I don't think, sir. We think in terms of it weakening the Indonesians in Timor, but it's trying to keep, let's say, congressional sentiment with regard to Indonesia from being rekindled, which we think now is a fairly satisfactory condition. Mr. Habib says there's no need to take this action. The Indonesians are trying to get an international and especially US and other blessing before they've done it. Let them go ahead and do what they're going to do. We have no objection. We've not objected in UN Security Council debates. They're quite happy with the position we've taken. We've resumed, as you know, all of our normal relations with them, and there isn't any problem solved. So basically, he's saying here we haven't put up an objection to them invading East Timor. We haven't done anything in the UN Security Council. They know we're okay with it, right?
Hmm.
Kissinger responds, not very willingly. Here's the interesting part. Mr. Habib says, sir. He responds, not very willingly, illegally, and beautifully.
Jesus Christ. It's so crazy, like the verbiage they'll use sometimes for this. Like, well, not
Yeah,
sometimes, but like, oh, it's a bombing campaign. It's a
right.
defense program, and there's a million others. Like the way they will just casually talk about just war as a business, and it is a business. I mean, Smedley Butler wrote the book a long time ago. It's just a
Right.
racket, and it
Now, mind
keeps
you, at
their
the same time, Ron, as this is going on, I wish we had more time to talk about this, but we don't. There were illegal arms sales happening to Indonesia because Kissinger and they had lied to Congress about this to get this done, get it to go
right.
through. So not only
Yeah,
are they
they
saying yes, Suharto knows that we're okay if he invades the country and kills a couple 100,000 people, fine. Um, let's get them the arms they need. I mean, it sort of reminds me a little bit about, the Iran Contra affair with Reagan.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely a lot of parallels there, and this is a guy that we give a Nobel Peace Prize to.
That's so
That's a
right. That's
that's a diplomat. That's just
that
a
is
little bit of controversy. He's a diplomat who had a little bit of controversy. I'll be honest, and maybe I just haven't seen everything that's out there. I'm sure obviously I haven't, but, like, I'm surprised it's not more nauseating than
yeah.
it's been. I expected it to be worse. I mean, of course, there was a lot of a lot of sanitized reports, as you would expect.
Right.
I did expect it to be worse than it was. So take that for what it's worth. I'm still in shock at that one Jim McGovern, the one congressional member who tweeted
Oh,
about
what, I didn't see that. What did he say?
I'll pull it up on my phone right now. I mean, he
Something
basically
loving and adoring, I'm assuming.
no, 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 the opposite. I mean, he
Oh,
actually I
okay.
was shocked. Here's what he tweeted, to
Okay.
his credit, and it still has not been deleted, and as far as I know, he hasn't apologized for it either. Remembering all the lives Henry Kissinger destroyed with the terrible violence he unleashed in countries like Chile, Vietnam, Argentina, East Timor, Cambodia, and Bangladesh, I never understood why people revered him. I will never forgive or forget.
He's right.
Oh,
I
he's
mean,
absolutely right, and it's a
that
member
opinion
of
shouldn't
the.
even be controversial. I mean, I see what you're saying though,
It's
because
not
people like
controversial. I'm just shocked it's coming from a member of the United States government because I
right,
don't have that high of a bar for them.
right,
So I am blown away. I mean, if it was just coming from a regular citizen, I'd be like,
right,
yeah, of course. But it's coming from a member of the United States government, one of the
right,
most, horrific
right,
institutions on the planet that enabled a Henry Kissinger and could
right,
enable future Henry Kissingers.
right.
So, but
I
I'm
get
blown
that.
away. Like even
Yeah.
some of the people who you would expect to like sanitize something like this, it doesn't seem like it's happening as much as I expected. Now
Yeah,
maybe my
you're right.
expectations are too low, which is possible. But
I think there's just been a release of too many previously classified documents at this point where people have seen these things, and it's really going to be a tough sell for the Washington Post, the New York Times, any paper of record to come out and say this guy isn't anything other than what he is.
right.
So what we're seeing is sort of a shift in the dynamics of the way they're framing headlines, right? I've seen a bunch of headlines where they're like, where this guy had a lot of stuff that he did that was bad. So
Oh,
people are just
that's
actively,
good. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
obviously the verbiage they use, they're very diplomatic, which I don't think you should be. I mean, I think it should just be war criminal, evil.
Some of them have been saying that. The
Some
Washington
people have
Post
said
had
war criminal in the
yeah,
headline.
Yeah.
Great. I'm glad to hear it. More of it. More of it. I'm surprised. I would not expect that from the Washington Post, but good, good. And kudos
I
to
mean, it is what it is. I don't think you can
whichever
frame it
journalist
any other
loses their
way.
job from that. Good for
Yeah.
them. They went down swinging. Good for them.
So I want to shift gears a little bit for a second and talking about Henry Kissinger's relationship to the Watergate scandal, because I think some folks have forgotten that he was part of that as well, right? So this is a article in the Mirror from a few years back. All right, so Henry Kissinger gave a chilling 11-word reply after being told that it is illegal during a discussion about his role in the Watergate scandal. The Watergate scandal emerged under President Nixon between 1972 and 1974, following his administration's illegal attempts to cover up its involvement in the break-in of the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C. Several burglars caught wiretapping and stealing documents were arrested at the office, with the prowlers having direct connections to Nixon's re-election campaign. However, despite the overtly illegal political scheming, the Nixon administration pressed hard at covering their tracks, with Kissinger's morally dubious remarks on the incident going down in history. Entered in the congressional record in 1973, according to The Nation, Kissinger was documented saying, wait for it, the illegal we do immediately, the unconstitutional takes a little longer.
That honestly, if that is the most appropriate description of Congress. I mean, it's terrible, but that is like that should be just plastered on the White House. It's appropriate, just so the public knows, because
Yeah, I
that is
mean,
100%
so
accurate.
not only are we going to do
Criminally
things that
so.
are illegal, we're going to do things that are unconscionable, and it'll be fine. I mean, but I think that just sort of frames the entire Nixon administration, including
Oh,
Kissinger. They
totally.
really believe this.
That quote,
Yeah,
and then when Nixon said, "When the president does it, it isn't illegal," because
right.
he said that around that time. This is a little fun trivia. Do you know where the Pentagon Papers, like where that kind of went down, the physicality of it?
You mean like
Like
geographically
no,
or
yeah, like
Rand
sliding the
at Rand?
papers.
I'm not.
No. It took place like Daniel Ellsberg sliding the papers over to the New York Times.
Oh, oh, oh.
It took place at a bar called Shay J in Santa Monica.
Yeah,
Still
I was gonna.
the
Well,
only
I was gonna
dive
say by
bar.
Rand, which is in Santa Monica, so I was assuming somewhere around here. Yeah.
Well, you were very yeah, that's so that answer would have been accepted. But yeah, it was at Shay J, which is still the only dive bar in that part of Santa Monica that's still
That's
standing
wild. All
because
right,
it's
good to
been
know.
there for a long
Shay
time.
J.
So if
So
you're
I
ever
want to
in
just
Santa Monica, sit
go to Shay J,
at the
right?
bar. Go to Shay J. It's
So,
actually a pretty quirky bar.
Colin, can we put up this one section of the classified document so people can see this? Time and place: Monday, March 10th, 1975. Place: the foreign minister's office. So the Europeans should find ways to meet quick needs. For example, the Air Force needs spare parts for other items that they can't find in the stocks. Maybe you could do a deal with the Dutch or others to send it there. Macomber says that is illegal. Kissinger responds, this is great. Before the Freedom of Information Act, before FOIA, I used to say at meetings, the illegal we do immediately, the unconstitutional takes a little longer. Everybody laughs. But since the Freedom of Information Act, I'm afraid to say things like that. So he's
What
said
an
this more than
asshole.
once. This is apparently a running joke that he
Was one
has.
of his that was one of his closers.
That was his closer, right?
That was one of his icebreakers. And his closers. That was on his Tinder profile years
That was
later.
on his Tinder. Oh my God, you're hilarious. So I want to end the show before we hand off to John. I think we have a little bit of time here. Hillary Clinton and Henry
Yeah, I was
Kissinger.
hoping we get to the Hillary one.
We are definitely going to do
Her
this because
friend.
this her
That's her
friend, like,
friend.
she publicly loved Henry forever and ever and ever. And if you'll recall, back in the 26, I believe it was the 2016 primary, Bernie Sanders sort of called her out on this. Like, why are you so enamored with Henry Kissinger? The guy is a war criminal. Like, are you kidding me with this? At some point, you're going to have to come to terms with that. We have all these declassified documents coming out that's not up for debate at this point. But,
Yeah.
you know,
Good
it's
times.
good.
Those primaries. Lot of great memories of
All right.
knowing
So
knowing that everything you suspected is true. knowing that
Everything, yeah,
all of your worst suspicions about the way politics really works in this country,
is
every
true.
single one of them is true.
So this is an ABC News article from 2016 from that time period. So this is
What do you think they're
Hillary and
laughing
Henry.
about? What
What
do
are
you
they?
think?
Who knows,
How many victims do you think they're just laughing
right?
about? What do you think? This is Did she do her "we came, we saw, he died" bit, and Henry Kissinger just couldn't hold it in?
He was
Look
like,
at them,
"Bravo." That was
those
some, yeah,
two.
bravo, right? All right, so Donald Trump may be the one meeting with former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, but he isn't the presidential candidate with the closest relationship to the controversial Republican politician. Hillary Clinton has come under fire from Senator Bernie Sanders over her ties to Kissinger, whose political legacy includes much of the Vietnam War. Unlike Republican presidential
Among a bunch
candidates,
of other things.
among other things, right? I mean, really, one of the things you could tag Kissinger with too is extending the Vietnam War years longer than it needed to be, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think the writing was on the wall much earlier. That war should have ended 6, 7, 8 years earlier than it did. It just kept, Anyway, unlike Republican presidential candidates such as Trump, who is scheduled to meet with Kissinger today, and Mitt Romney in 2012, Clinton has done more than just pay him a visit before an election. And there's that photo. The two former secretaries of state have been close for years, with Clinton
Wait, go
calling
back
him
to
a
that photo real quick.
go
It looks like they're at like she's a volunteer at a senior prom.
I
Like
know.
it looks like she took him out of his nursing home and he was like, "Ah, who are you?" And she's like, "I'm Hillary, one of the volunteers." And he goes, "Oh, back in my day." And she goes, "Oh, you. It's
Oh, yeah.
okay because you're really old."
That's so funny. The two former secretaries of state have been close for years, with Clinton calling him a friend and noting that she relied on his counsel when she was Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013.
That's
He checked
awesome.
in, yeah, he checked in with me regularly, sharing astute observations about foreign leaders and sending me written reports on his travels. Though we have often seen the world and some of our challenges quite differently and advocated different responses now and in the past, I'm not sure that that's true. She wrote in a review of
Yeah,
his book World Order that was published in the Post in 2014.
of course she did. And yeah, I wonder if that is true. When has Hillary seen a war she didn't like?
I agree with you.
At least when she's had any power. I mean, maybe back when she was younger, she wasn't a fan of Vietnam just as a citizen. I don't know.
I don't know.
But
She was a gold water girl. I don't know about that.
right. I mean, so yeah, even that, like, it's not a guarantee. And they like did they do some union busting thing when they were younger or something too? But yeah, so who knows? But outside of like, when was she ever? I mean, certainly not when she had any kind of power.
I'd
She
say
never
she's
saw a
always been a
war.
hawk. I would say Clinton's
Totally.
always, yeah. I would
She
say she
never
definitely
saw a
subscribes.
war she didn't like. Never
Right.
saw
I
a war
agree.
she didn't like.
I agree. I would say she definitely subscribes to the realist ideology of international relations. Yeah. All right, so she also included mentions of Kissinger in her own book, Hard Choices, which detail her time as Secretary of State, referencing him during portions about China. Clinton and
Hard
Kissinger's ties.
choices.
Well, what?
She has all these books with like these dumped what happened,
I
hard
know.
choices, the truth according to Hillary. It's like, oh my god, how many books
Yeah,
are you gonna
I know.
write that no one cares about?
Yeah, I
Anyway,
don't want to read
continue.
that. To be frank, I don't want to read that. Yeah. All right. Clinton and Kissinger's ties extend beyond politics. The two are so friendly that when Clinton was set to present a fashion industry award to designer Oscar de la Renta, the event was rearranged so that both Clinton and de la Renta were able to attend Kissinger's 90th birthday party in New York.
Okay, I need to write down. I'm not a big designer expert, but I will never wear anything from Oscar
From-
de la Renta now. I don't know what they make. I'm not hip to this, but I'm
He
not
was a
very.
popular designer, I'd say 30 years ago. I don't think that he is so much anymore.
All right.
Maybe I'm
Well,
wrong though. I don't know.
whatever is under that umbrella, I will never wear any of it. Actually, my fashion industry, like ignorance, is kind of funny because my sister works in that industry. So it's like it'll blow her mind. Like I was at this event once, and this guy told me that he was wearing a Valentino suit, and at the
Oh,
time, I didn't know what
Valentino's nice.
Well, I didn't know what it was at the time. I thought he was just talking about a dude. And I was like, "Oh, cool. Can I meet him? Is he here?" And the
Oh
guy
my
just sort
gosh.
of looked at me
Guy's
like,
like, "No."
yeah, he goes, yeah. So anyway, and then I texted my
All
sister
right.
the next day and I was like, "Hey, do you know what Valentino is?" And she goes, "Yeah, dude." And
She's
she
like,
goes,
"Yeah, dude,
"How are
I
we
know who
related?"
Valentino is. 100%. Italian, I believe.
Yes.
Though she has not spoken at length about her relationship with Kissinger during her ongoing presidential campaign, Clinton hasn't shied away from her connection to the controversial Republican either. During a debate in New Hampshire in February, Clinton brought him up as a positive. I was very flattered when Henry Kissinger said I ran the State Department better than anybody had run in a long time, she said, which was completely tone deaf, if I remember. Senator Bernie Sanders has criticized her ties to Kissinger, saying during a subsequent debate that he found it rather amazing that she is proud of the connection because I happen to believe that Henry Kissinger was one of the most destructive secretaries of state in the modern history of this country. I agree with you, Bernie Sanders. That's true. I'm proud to say that Henry Kissinger is not my friend. I will not take advice from Henry Kissinger's. Sanders said before noting Kissinger's involvement in the bombing of Cambodia, which some
I
critics.
remember that moment
I do
in
too.
the
I forgot that this was
I
in this
can hear
article.
it
Yeah,
in my head now that you're reading it.
right,
I can hear it in my head. I remember when that happened. I remember cheering. I remember the optimism I had at that point in time, and now I feel a
right.
little sad.
No,
When you think about what's happened with not just Bernie Sanders, but the movement that happened as a result of Bernie Sanders, it is I'm still not ready to really take it all on head on. It is so sad, especially for those of us who, have been on the left for a while. Like this wasn't like our break into politics or whatever. Like it was so heartbreaking because at first it was like, "Oh, we're not as alone as we thought we were." And even though there's still some truth in that, at the end of the day, everything became so fractured and splintered that I would actually argue, and it breaks my heart to say this, but I do believe it to be the truth, we're worse off now than we were in 2016. I think the Bernie movement has actually like we're not through the fault of that movement. Like there were a ton of other factors out of anyone's control, but I think overall we're actually in a worse place than we were in 2016
uh,
because the
so let me.
extremists have risen and it
I was going to
hasn't
say that.
been
Let me give you my 2 cents on that. I think you're making a good point here in the sense that there's been a lot of reactionary stuff that has come out of the. So I think people couldn't quite pinpoint where they were at politically prior to Bernie Sanders coming in and explaining
right.
to him, you're not wrong to feel you're getting the short end of the stick, where the income inequality is more extreme than it ever has been, that public education, public college has been definanced and is unaffordable at this point, that there's no mobility between classes anymore, that like, so he was able to sort of give the form for what people were feeling at that time. Like they knew that they were struggling, but you have economic news stations like CNBC constantly saying, look how great the economy is,
Right.
look at the stock market. So finally some guy comes along and is like, yeah, no, that's the stock market's a gauge for rich people's fees. It's not really a robust metric to look at the broader economy with. This is what's actually going on. So I think people responded to that. I think part of that included people that were just angry and anti-establishment.
Well,
Maybe
yeah,
maybe not
and
necessarily more to having leftist principles, right? They're just angry, they're
totally.
anti-establishment, they want change. So there is a portion of the folks that would have voted for Bernie that are now, let's be honest, that are now literally neo Nazis.
Yeah.
There's a Patriot Front guy that's an ex Bernie guy that are definitely went and voted for Trump, became Trumpers. That's not up for debate.
Well,
So
and
a lot of that
QAnon, I
is
mean, look, when you
it's
have
reactionary.
well, and it's in kind of the anatomy of a revolution. When you have a status quo that's clearly broken, people are going to start, looking for alternatives that are deemed quote unquote extreme by that which is broken. So in this case, it's like, well, what's totally different than our status quo? Well, a more progressive way of living, or
Right.
something that's even more fascistic than what we have
Right.
now. And
Right.
you saw both things splinter, and
Right.
sadly, the wrong side is growing a lot faster.
I agree.
That's just the reality. I mean, there
I
and you
agree.
see people are clinging to these half-baked, like not even
Conspiracy theories. Yeah.
libertarian, not even like it's beyond libertarianism. It's like these half-baked eugenicist, dog whistle
Yeah.
nonsense. And it's stuff that would never work in a society. It is like by the
No.
book fascism. It's just reactionary for
Yep.
reactionary sake. It's
I agree.
contrarian for contrarian sake.
I
There's
agree.
no depth to it. There's no analysis. There's no context. There's no nuance.
Right.
And that's what's winning. So,
I
like, a
agree.
lot of the
It
momentum
scares
in
me, to be frank. I'm with
2016.
you, Ron. I'm
Oh,
with you, Ron.
it's
Like
absolutely terrifying. I mean, and that's why I say, like, the worst is yet to come.
I agree.
Like,
I think a lot of folks don't realize. So you have people that are fascists at this point, and they do want fascism to take over the country. America first. Uh, their white nationalism that's attached to
yeah.
that, xenophobia that's attached to that. That
And
is
then you have
100% a thing.
people that don't even realize that's what they're subscribing to.
I
You
agree.
have
There's
that too.
people that are
You have
sort of
people
in
who don't
between.
realize what they're subscribing to.
I agree. They're being red pilled, even though they think they're still on the left or something. That is 100% true. I've had conversation with folks like that. One of the things I often say to them is like, okay, so burn it all down, become really nihilistic. Um, what do you think replaces the government we have now when that happens? I feel like you're making an assumption that what comes next is some sort of government that's an improvement. My worry, though, is that what's really obvious to me, and I think to you too, Ron, is that that's probably not the case. What replaces what we have now is definitely more authoritarian and definitely more fascist, if that were to happen.
Mhm.
So I try to caution people on where that leads them. I understand why people are angry. I understand why they feel like they're not getting a fair shake. They're not. I get it. And I would also note that, oftentimes when I'm reading through the neo-Nazi Telegram chat rooms, these guys have the same
Like you do on
beefs
a Friday night.
like I do every morning actually over my coffee. These
Ba
guys have the same beefs,
wow.
Ron, that the left has, right? They're like they understand that income equality is bad. They're not getting a shake. Like if you block out the names of what you're looking at and you ignore the Nazi stuff that goes with it and you just look at what they're saying the problem is minus the
Right.
stuff, it's the
If you
same.
right.
So what they do instead, because it's very reactionary, is they say, well, the reason it's this way is because we're not a white country. That's the
Right.
problem. They
Right.
can't seem to understand that it's the plutonomy, the 1%, that have rigged the system this way, that are continuing to extract wealth from the greater economy, that they are the problem. And when they do, they make it some anti-Semitic bullshit, right?
Well,
So
totally.
I'm thinking about this conversation I had with some Nazis in Modesto. I was like, bro, like, you've just cherry picked the one Jewish guy, ignoring the 30 other white men that
Mhm.
are like more prevalent and doing more harm. Do you not see the problem here? How
Well,
how are you
look.
like
Yeah, I mean, bravo to you for doing it. I actually I heard an interview recently with the comedian Doug Stanhope, who very, very funny comic. I don't agree with all of his views politically, but very, very funny comic. But he said something that I thought was like really interesting, and I love the way he put it. He just said, when I hear people say, like, oh, well, if someone's even thinking about racism, I'm not even gonna start with them. And he goes, I hear people say that and I kind of think, well, maybe you should, because you know who is willing to go to them?
right,
Actual racist.
right,
Actual racists are willing to go to somebody who's maybe a little bit confused and susceptible to some shitty ideas. And they're willing to go to that person and be like,
and
yeah,
red
here's why
pill
you
them.
need to embrace these terrible ideas. So maybe it's a good idea to try to pull people the other way.
Right, right. On that note, I know, Colin, how much time do we have before we
Yeah,
have to
we've
switch over to
probably got to
John?
bail. Colin left. He
Colin
was
might be
tired of your
setting the.
internet issues. He
You,
bailed.
you guys got about probably like 5 or 10 minutes.
Oh,
All
okay,
right,
we have time.
let's just go to. We have a super chat. Why don't we
Yeah,
make sure we
let's
get to
definitely go
that?
to the super chat.
I can read it. I don't know if you here. I can do the whole. There we go. Boom. What's up, Chris Garrett? Friend of the show, Chris Garrett, member extraordinaire, Chris Garrett. It's so nice to see Tina and Ron back together, bringing us the perspective on the news. It's pretty Kissinger heavy today. Pretty
Yeah,
Kissinger
well,
heavy.
so originally, Chris, I had planned
He's
to
not
maybe I can.
done.
Oh,
We've missed the status coup dynamic duo. Okay, now you can respond.
okay. Yes, the dynamic duo. originally I was going to have Ron on, and maybe he can do it next week. I'll see if he can. I wanted to do like a listicle of the 10 top most craziest right-wing extremist moments of the year, because it's funny stuff. A lot of it's really funny, and I know Ron, and I started making that list, and it's stuff, and I don't want to tell Ron ahead of time because I want him to react to it, have his like funny responses. Maybe we can do it next Friday. But then Kissinger went and died on us Wednesday, so it was like, oh, wait a minute.
We gotta
We
bump
gotta
that.
do Kissinger.
We gotta. I mean, how can
We
you
gotta do
not?
Kissinger.
How can you not? And I've not really talked about it much, other than just like tweets and stuff. I haven't really been on an appropriate platform to really just, talk about Kissinger. The theocratic fascists. This is from Nadia Chambers. What's up, Nadia? Good to see you.
Like
The
the photo.
theocratic fascists have been working towards this since 1954. And Michael Leedon's been pushing for it since 1972. 2025 will be very, very bad. I mean,
I agree.
I don't like saying that stuff, but it is the freaking truth. Like, you can't deny the
No.
direction we're heading. And when you look at it, big picture, it's like all the warnings are there. So if we don't say anything, we're pretty much going to guarantee. I mean, I'm not trying to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's like if you don't say what's happening, that we're guaranteed it's going to happen, because apathy is its biggest weapon. So, it's not too late. Like the fate is not sealed. But
no, it's not
I mean,
sealed. People need to be just, more vigilant, more understanding, and willing to have conversations in many respects. I think, one thing that concerns me, obviously, Trump is the leader of the GOP PAC. Even given what he's done, Marjorie Taylor Greene's out there saying, "I'll vote for him even if he's in prison." So much of what's led us to this place, though, is what I'm calling post-truth America, right? This idea that the truthiness, whatever, is whatever people have decided they want it to be. That's not what truth is, folks. It's just not. But there's so many. That's a deep dive conversation. But there's so many things that have brought us to that point, and it's sort of what's driving a lot of this. My worry is this, Ron. I think we get into, obviously, 2025. We're going into this primary cycle currently, and then to the general election on the president. I think Trump is definitely going to be the nominee. I think he very well might end up being convicted in Georgia and having to serve some time. It is also a very real possibility, and wrap your head around this. I've had this verified by people in the know, that Trump wins the presidential election and pardons himself.
Yeah,
he can do that.
Or he just governs from jail. And you know what jail is going to be for him? It's not going to be
something squishy and soft, and
it'll be like he's limited to Mar-Lago a couple times a week, and then
But
he
this
can
is
go
crazy.
wherever.
So also, let me paint a picture for you where he doesn't win the presidency. So all of those elements that existed on January 6th, they are still there. I've been out at some Trump rallies recently, and they are saying the same thing. They believe that he won the last election. I had a guy at this last Trump thing I went to basically say that the Status Coup video from January 6th clearly showed that it was Antifa storming the Capitol, not Trump people. I was like, yeah, no, that's not what the footage shows. Why do you say that? And then I named some friends of his, like people I know he's friends with, that are in jail for what they did.
You should have just tried to take the guy for a ride and just been like, you know what, you're right. That's the footage they're suppressing. They're suppressing that footage. But if you give us $5 million, we'll get that footage out there.
We'll get it back.
We'll get the
YouTube
truth.
will reinstate it, right?
CNN took it. CNN took it. But if you give Status Coup $1 million, tell all of your friends, we'll start a GoFundMe. We'll get you that
That's
footage.
so funny.
Then we just give them the footage. Be like, here you go. Here's the footage.
But I mean,
so
Ron,
you're not lying.
No, but point being is that they're animated by things that are provably false, but you can't talk to them otherwise they actually really believe this. So what happens with those folks when Trump loses again? Do you think they're just going to go off into the night quietly? Because they're not.
No, I think it's also, I think part of the reason he gave that speech on Veterans Day that would have made Mussolini blush, because
Yeah,
I mean, I have always believed this. I will always believe this. Trump is just a narcissistic buffoon who believes in nothing.
I
I don't
agree.
think he has any convictions whatsoever. I
I
still
agree.
think that overall he is less dangerous than a Ron DeSantis because of that. But here's the thing,
Right.
he's sounding crazier and crazier. And it's because
Yes.
he knows that he got out crazied by some of his base. For
Right.
some of his base, some of them just left him because they actually thought he was going to do what he said he was going to do. And then they realized
And
he
then
was
he
full of
didn't,
baloney.
right? He
But
didn't go
some of
far
them,
enough.
but yeah,
Right.
some of them, he's not nutty enough for them. So
No, you're
he's
right.
got to try. All right, we got a few more things to get to, and I know we got to go here. But
Okay.
Adria, what's up, Adria French? Thank you so much for your membership. Google Victor Yara in Chile. So I've heard about this. It's a musician who was
Assassinated?
assassinated. I don't know all the
Hmm.
details of the story, but I did. I
By
had
Pinochet,
heard
I'm
about it.
assuming?
Yeah, I had heard
Okay.
about that before, just kind of in the ethers, and then I saw you talking about it some of the chat. So thank you for that. I will look that up to learn more about it in detail, and I'm going to write it down so I don't forget. And
Okay.
folks, you know what? Since we're on the topic, if you can, please do become a member here at Status Coup. Your membership funds on the ground journalism. It allows Tina to cover all the protests and rallies that she's been doing. It allowed us to be
Yeah.
on the ground at the UAW strike the entire time. All of us were there, myself included,
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
It allows Jordan to tell the truth about what's going on in Flint. It allows Status Lou to go to East Palestine. It allows Tina to go to Cop City. It allows us to hopefully get better internet for Tina. You're funding on the ground journalism. Seriously, folks, $5 a month or $10 a month. That's about 16 cents a day or 33 cents a day. Makes a wonderful holiday gift. I know times are tough. So if that's not you, it's totally okay. There's tons of ways you can help this show for free. Like
Yeah.
these streams, share these streams, tell your friends. But if you're thinking, you know what, I can spare 16 cents a day, please. It's going to journalism. It's going to real
Yeah.
journalism, which the country is miserably failing at because the people with all the money and the
It's going to
power,
help fund
they
what
don't do journalism.
John Frieda's doing this afternoon. You know, our live view costs a pretty penny every month, but we need to have that equipment to do what we do. So yes, thank you,
Chris,
Chris. It
got
does.
it, Chris.
We're on the ground.
Friends, we're on the ground recording.
I see what you did there.
Perfect. All right. Well, everybody, you can check me out at ronplacone.com. Some screenings have been announced for my movie. So if you're in Tucson, Pittsburgh, or what's the way? Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska just got announced, and Washington, D.C. My movie's going to be playing there, and we'll have more information about that soon. And yeah, any parting words, Tina?
Well, I'm wondering, is John going to pop in on this live stream, or do you pass the audience over to, like, how does that work, Colin? Is he?
It passes the audience. So the audience, you guys
Oh,
just
so you
chill
don't get to talk
here.
to John? Okay.
No,
he's-
unfortunately.
All right.
He's on
One
your
day.
internet. He's really
He's
John. We're counting on you to dial him into the Wi-Fi, and that's
guys
how he's
just-
going to do it.
Just chill and chat, and YouTube will automatically put you in that stream. You don't need to go find it or anything.
Okay, yeah, everybody
Okay,
just
good.
stay in the chat.
Everybody just chill and chat, and we're going to hand it over to John,
for all the Pittsburgh people, I'll actually
I'll
be
leave
at
all
the
the Pittsburgh
show.
people.
I'll be at the
Woo!
so the Pittsburgh show is not just a screening, it is also a short show and a Q&A after. So I'll
right
be
on.
there. You're going to see a short show, you're going to see my movie, and then there's a Q&A after. So yeah, Pittsburgh, March 22nd, get your tickets now. So far, all the other cities that have been announced, those are just places that are screening the movie. I won't actually be there. But Pittsburgh, you're getting a full thing. So yeah, ronplacone.com for all those tickets.
Right on, right on. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today, Friday, December 1st, believe it or not.
It's the first.
So John,
and here we go. Adria, thank you so much.
Oh, nice.
Adria gifted a Status Coup membership. So thank you, Adria. Thank you for that tip. I am going to look up Victor Yara and learn more about that. Thank you, Nadia. And of course, thank you, Chris Garrett. Thank you all so much. You help keep this show on the air. Thank you for allowing us to do what we do. And yeah, we'll be back. Hopefully we'll get to do that end of year
Ron,
thing.
hopefully I'm going to have you back on Friday where we can do our 10 most crazy, funny, right-wing insanity moments.
I'm the countdown guy. I'm the countdown guy at Status Coup.
You are the countdown guy.
I do the 5 political turkeys. I do the craziest right-wing countdowns. I'm the countdown guy. That's one of my lanes here. I like it.
All right, everybody. Have a good Friday. John Farina is coming up. He is on the ground at the ceasefire rally. So stay tuned.